Welcome back to the Dialed In podcast. I'm Mo, and finally reunited, and it feels so good. We got Gene back on the pod. Gene, how you doing, buddy?
Like I never left. I'm good. It's good to be back. What was it? 9 cities in about 3 weeks. London, New York, LA, Singapore, Beijing, Shanghai, Seoul, and then New York and LA a couple times in between.
Damn.
Crazy travel schedule, but awesome trip, and I'm glad to be back.
Any highlights from the trip you want to tell us about before we dive into the episode?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, just going through those cities, I don't know what my expectations of China were, going into it. I'd never been before, and so it was a new experience for me. But in an incredible twist of fortune, my hotel in Shanghai in particular was near sort of this shopping district that's pretty well known. But one particular stretch of it is a street that is basically lined with all the watch shops. And so I did have the opportunity to walk into a bunch of different shops, which frankly had a really good selection straight across the board. Thought about buying a couple of pieces, didn't end up doing it. In retrospect, I sort of regret it, knowing now that prices have gone up. The timing was a little bit off for me, but really good trip, and I saw some good things. So maybe we can get into a few of those watches a bit later today.
Awesome. And before we properly dive in, just, a very happy birthday to you, belated. I'm not going to out you on your age, but it was a big one. So happy birthday,
it's a milestone. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Cool. Any thoughts on the solo pods I did while you were away?
Yeah, I thought they were really, really good. I was listening to the one in particular about kind of your grievances, and found myself in most instances totally agreeing with you. By the way, I don't know who puts their thumb on the crystal when handling your watch, or turning the crown to either. That's just flat out like a violation of human rights. It's crazy. I don't even know who does that, where they were raised, who they were raised by. But that is a complete that is against the laws of human nature. So there's that. And I will say the one area that I didn't totally agree, even though I don't own a NATO strap, I will say that there's probably the right time, occasion, and watch where it works. So I don't think they're an abomination, or I think your word was atrocious. But overall, I thought you were pretty spot on with your comments, and I thought that Tiffany, Patek episode was incredibly well done, very well researched, and I found myself, listening to it and learning a ton, which is always great. So I think you've done a service to humanity by giving us that background in history.
Well, thanks, man. It's I put it this way: I'm happy to have you back. Doing these things solo is not as fun. So and just on the NATO straps, I did get quite a bit of challenges on the Instagram, which is fine, which is why we do this, right? Everyone's got to have their own opinion. Okay, so with that, we got a good episode for you guys today. Gene, I want to do something interesting, just kind of like light and fun, and talk about watches and what they say about their owners, like what we think when we see people wearing certain watches. And I have a long list of watches, so we'll keep our answers kind of punchy. Yeah, before we do that, I got some roundup of some watch news too. But guys, as always, there's no barrier to entry here on the Dialed In pod, just a love for watches. So with that, let's get dialed in. Gene, I want to talk about auctions. There was just a Phillips auction in Geneva. I don't follow them so closely, to be fully honest, and I don't think you do either. Just sort of like some interesting results that I thought I'd bring up. I saw like a John Player Special Daytona sell for over $1 million. I think we're all kind of numb to that now. That's sort of the market, if you will. I don't think anyone's really surprised. But one surprising one that I wanted to bring up, which I think you saw as well as we were just chatting before we hopped on, is this Cartier crash that was a NSO, right, new special order from Cartier. from 2021. Okay, this is not like a vintage crash of any kind. It's a 2021 crash. White gold. It's like, I think they call it a nickel gray dial. The estimate for this watch was between 150 to 250,000 Swiss francs. It sold for 756,000 Swiss francs. That's 900,000 US dollars. Just absurd. I have no. What are your thoughts on this?
I saw. Look, that's eye popping. It's a completely staggering number. I mean, look, the market for crashes has been, pretty insane over the last several years in particular, as Cartier has sort of gained, momentum and relevance in the watch community in the context of just like, sales and that sort of thing. I do find this particular example of the crash to be pretty boring, if I'm being honest with you. The gray dial, it looks kind of washed out. Funnily enough, when I saw the picture of it, I almost thought it was like a black and white photo. Just because it was just so flat. I just don't know who's spending that amount of money for this particular crash. It boggles my mind.
Yeah, man. I 100% agree. And listen, if I were to spend $1 million on a watch, which I don't know if I'll ever be in a position to do that, but if I were, it would certainly not be on a incredibly boring tone-on-tone crash. But I don't know. Tell us if you disagree. All right, another interesting thing I wanted to talk about was, so obviously April 1st was Watches and Wonders, and that's when a lot of big brands introduced their novelties. We did an episode on it. Go back and listen if you want. But we're starting to see some of the Rolex novelties actually come out and be sold in the secondary market. The new John Mayer Daytona, the John Mayer 2.0, as people are calling it. This is the yellow gold Daytona with the green dial. And what differentiates this from the original one that's now discontinued is, the original was kind of all green, even the subdials, and this one has yellow gold subdials. Mm-hmm. Now, retail, this is about $48,000.
Right.
It sold for $171,000. Gene, I mean, before I collapse,
that is an unreal number. I don't know who wants to look. I like this watch. In fact, we discussed it during Watches and Wonders. I think I liked it more than you did. Mm-hmm. And I can't recall if we talked about it during the pod or if it was something where we just had a more casual conversation about it. I actually like this watch a lot. But I don't know who wants it this badly to spend, I mean, almost, what is it? Somewhere between 3 and 4 times the retail value of this watch just to have it now. I mean, the allure of it at this time is the fact that you're probably getting one of the first ones to sort of hit the street. And I guess there's value in having it on your wrist and being able to say you're one of the first people that own it.
And
then you're taking a loss on it.
In 3 months, exactly. In 3 months, when people actually start having it from their ADs, or 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is, like what you just lost $80,000. I don't know. It's a wild proposition to spend that much money on a new release just to be one of the first ones to have it. Particularly,
I mean, that's the only,
even in Rolex paperwork,
that is the only thing numbers, that I can.
You want to be able to resell it as one of the first. It's really just for flex rights, in my opinion. But anyway, the other one I thought I'd mention is one that I think we both liked, actually, was the Pistachio Oyster Perpetual, the 41 millimeter. That retails for $6,500, mm-hmm. and it's sold on Loop This actually for $21,000, which again, pretty crazy for a time only OP.
It's insane.
With a different dial color. Yeah. We don't even know if it's going to be as limited as the Tiffany one, right? The Tiffany blue one, which I doubt it will be. It's just a new Oyster Perpetual color dial. And, so 3 times retail.
You are just paying to say that you have it now. I mean, that's really the bottom line.
All right. Well, tell us what you guys think, listeners. Would love to hear your opinion on this. And hey, if you're the one that bought either of these, come on the pod and talk to us. Prove us wrong.
Tell us why.
Yeah, tell us why you're not an insane person. All right, last thing before we dive into the watches. I don't know if you read about this today. Actually, it was just announced today, but there's going to be this new sort of annual day that has been put together by all these horological societies around the world called World Watch Day. And it's happening on October 10th every year. This year, of course, being the first year. And it's really just like a day to celebrate watchmaking around the world, which I thought was pretty cool and also like surprising that we have these like national taco days and global pizza day and all these crazy days that have been around for years. And, an old and important art like watchmaking has never really had its own day of global recognition, if you will. And so I thought it was pretty interesting. And I think there's going to be a lot of like offline and online activations around this day around the world. At all these horological societies, I'm sure you're going to see all the YouTubers do things in collaborations with brands and tell interesting stories about watchmakers. And I think it's going to be really cool. Hopefully you and I will choose to do something kind of cool around that October 10th, that time frame. But I wanted to let everyone know and interesting that it's October 10th. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the reason is the date in numerical value is 1010. And as you may know, most watches that are professionally photographed are always photographed with the time set to 10 past 10, which is a symbol of like balance and beauty and joy and timekeeping. So a little play on that for the date itself, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, definitely. I actually didn't know until, several years ago, but fairly recently that all watches were set to 1010 and when they're professionally photographed.
There's like some psychology.
Cool fun fact.
Yeah. So there's like two reasons. It's like there's psychology around it because it kind of looks like a smile. So it's actually meant to put you in like a positive mood and in a buying mood, which I don't know, jury's out on that if that's true or not, but it's certainly a rumor that goes around that you hear quite often. And the second is that obviously it's just like if there's complications on it or you want to see the brand name at the top, like 1010 is sort of the least obstructive way to view the dial and the different subdials that may be on it. But yeah, the more you know. All right, Gene, so I'm going to list some watches and we're going to discuss, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, what they say about the person wearing them. So for this exercise purposes, just like assume you're sitting down at a lunch somewhere and someone walks by you with the watch I'm going to mention on their wrist. I want to know what you're thinking about them at that moment. Like, what does that watch say about the owner? And I'm either going to say like a specific watch or just generally like a watch brand, and you can interpret it as you wish.
Okay.
All right, we'll start off kind of easy here.
Okay.
Let's go with just a modern Rolex Submariner. What are your thoughts about that person?
Well, let me preface what I'm about to say, and this is a little bit of a cop out. But the truth is that I think a watch is, when someone wears a watch, my impression of that person is a bit more multimodal, I guess. Right? Like you're sort of taking in all the information. The watch is obviously one component of how you receive someone, and it's their clothing, it's the way they talk, it's the way they walk, all of that stuff. And so it's a little imperfect to just say like, what do you think of someone based on their watch? But we're going to do it for the purpose of this exercise. So as far as a sub goes, look, it's an icon of a watch. I think you've probably owned a couple subs, so have I. And so I'm immediately thinking that this person is a watch enthusiast of some kind, either at the beginning of their journey or maybe they're a bit more advanced. But my initial impression is that they know watches, at least something about watches, and this is probably someone that has piqued my interest a little bit, and maybe there's a further conversation to be had there.
Wow, we are starting this off diametrically opposed. So my thoughts on this are, I know nothing about you if you're wearing a sub. Yeah, it is the most common watch of all time. Yes, a luxury watch, but like everyone's first luxury watch, whether you know it about watches or not, you get the Submariner. It's like it's like the most well-known and sort of recognized watch. Iconic, sure, but boring. And 99% chance I will not try and strike up a conversation with you because I'm assuming you likely know nothing about watches.
Okay.
Now, if we're talking vintage Submariner, like a double red or like a big crown, like, okay, that person likely knows a ton about watches, or they inherited this watch from their grandfather, grandmother, whatever it is. But like you definitely have some stories that I want to hear.
Yeah.
If you're just walking around in a modern, ceramic bezel sub, next,
Really? I wear mine all the time, Monish.
Yeah, says nothing about you. I would have zero idea that you have a great watch collection. Okay, a Tudor Black Bay or Pelagos?
Couldn't afford a sub.
Okay. I maybe likely. My take on this is a little more nuanced. So I think what I can tell about you is that you're definitely a watch person, either novice or deep in the game, and you likely have a million reasons why you chose that watch over other watches in that price range. And it's likely not your only mechanical watch. Whereas the guy wearing the sub could only have one watch, and it's a luxury watch, but it's just their one watch. If you're wearing like a Tudor Black Bay or Pelagos, likely you've messed around with like Citizens, Seikos, tons of other watches potentially. And you're proud and excited to wear this watch, and likely have a long story as to why you chose it.
Look, all of that could be true. I'm just saying my first impression is that. So we're starting off on opposite ends of the spectrum here. But
all right, well, I think we'll be united in this. I'll say the brand, and I'm going to go first on this one. So Richard Mille. And my take is, unless you're an athlete or associated with an athlete or a sports team, you're likely just a douchebag who's trying to flex, right? I mean, not taking anything away from like the technical achievements of RM or their marketing genius, but this is solely a flex watch that you want people to notice and either know or guess how many hundreds of thousands of dollars you paid for it.
Yeah.
And or last comment on it is maybe you're laundering money. But that's what I know about you when you wear an RM. What do you think?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think, I'm immediately thinking this person is, flamboyant, ostentatious, just generally speaking, over the top, and probably not someone that I want to have a conversation with. I'm just sort of running this in my mind and thinking that it's going to be, kind of a painful conversation. The person's going to be loud and talk too much and, all the things that I hate. So, I'm right there with you.
Right, unless you're like Rafael Nadal or Lewis Hamilton, or like have a reason to be wearing one.
If you're, Charles Leclerc and you're wearing your own model, great, awesome.
Yeah.
But outside of that, you've clearly spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not over $1 million on this particular watch, and I think given what you could also buy with that money and the fact that you've chosen an RM, says what we're saying about you.
Okay. Hublot Big Bang. I'll let you take this one first.
Listen, I actually think that the watch itself, like completely in a vacuum, just looking at the design, it's actually a good looking. Hublot as a brand has been much maligned. And so, if I'm saying, what I'm immediately thinking if I see someone that's wearing one, I'm just thinking that it's really one of two things. One, they just didn't know, right? They got talked into buying this watch at an AD of some kind, right? They looked at it and it was objectively a good looking watch, but they had no clue about the brand. They didn't do their research, and they bought this watch because someone sold it to them. Or at the opposite end of that spectrum is to sort of say like they just don't care about what other people think, which is kind of cool, I guess, but it's really one or the other.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you on this. I think if you paid retail for it, you're an idiot. I also question your choices and want to know why you chose it over anything else in that price range. That seems odd to me. I also think you're someone who likely wants an AP offshore and didn't want to or couldn't lay out the money for it, and so you bought the Big Bang on the secondary market. And you likely think it's a flex because you listened to hip hop in the early 2000s. but sadly it's 2025 and it's just not a flex. So that's my take on the Big Bang. Royal Oak in any iteration, not just the jumbo. It can be, the 41 millimeter, 37 millimeter, 39 millimeter. It could be chrono. Let's not go offshore. Let's just talk about just your standard Royal Oak line.
Yeah. I think watches. I think something about high horology. Something at that point probably about the Trinity. And so I'm just generally thinking that you are a watch enthusiast. It is one of the most iconic designs in modern watchmaking. So yeah, I'm just thinking we are probably kindred spirits on some level. I own a Royal Oak myself, as do you. So yeah, I'm just immediately thinking that this person is really into watches, probably fairly deep, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, so I think it's a tough one. I think you're right on most of that. I think the idea of whether they're a watch enthusiast or not, like they could just be a rich guy, who just knows it's a status symbol. And that's okay too, because it's a epic watch, in all forms. And so I actually don't mind if you're a watch enthusiast or someone told you that it would be cool to wear a Royal Oak on your wrist and so you're wearing it. Like you got good taste. That's my take on that person, is they have
great
good
taste.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Jacob & Co. Your favorite brand, man, right?
It's I feel very similarly to what we just said about RM. I think it's a flex. I think it is flamboyant. I think it's over the top. Yeah, I don't even know what to say. I'm sort of speechless about it, and it's just gross.
Yeah. So Jacob & Co., if you paid for it, you're an even bigger idiot than the guy who bought the Hublot at retail. These watches are like exclusively for celebrities who get gifted them by Jacob himself to make it seem like they're everywhere and respected, but they're just not. So if you've gone out and bought a Jacob, I don't even care if I'm offending you right now. You should stop listening to this podcast. These are awful.
They're at the top of the list of idiocy then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, in my opinion, the list of idiocy almost starts and ends with Jacob, right? I mean, you can justify a Hublot. And first of all, I mentioned the Big Bang earlier, and I'm kind of talking about the classic version when I'm talking about the Hublot Big Bang. I think some of the stuff that Hublot has been releasing over the last 5 years has been super cool and super impressive. Like, I can't remember what it's called, but they just released that watch in like mint green ceramic. I don't know, that's cool. They're doing some cool stuff, right? But like, Jacob has literally zero redeeming qualities. And one as a person, so I hear, and as a brand, definitely. Okay, Speedmaster.
I own one. So full disclosure, I wear it quite often. I will say it is the watch that I wear when I want to, wear something that's a signifier of the fact that I love watches, but is not going to draw the attention of something, some of the other pieces that I have in my collection. And so what I'll say is that the Speedmaster really feels like it has a place in almost any, collection, regardless of sort of the other pieces that you own. So I'm thinking, my most immediate thought is that, this is definitely, a watch person of some kind, especially when you're talking about vintage as well. I think if someone's wearing a vintage Speedy, that's actually pretty cool. If you're talking about something that's like Hesselite or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my take. Mine's a little punchier, if you will. So my take is I see someone walk in with a Speedmaster, and I'm thinking modern, to be fair. But I think you read a Hodinkee article once that told you that this is the only watch that must be in every collection, and you think it's super cool that it was the first watch on the moon, and probably tell people about it, and you secretly hate that you have to wind it every time you put it on. That's what I think about Speedmaster owners.
I do secretly hate that I have to wind it every time I put it on, so I agree with you. I will say that Omega has done an unbelievable job of narrative and storytelling around the Speedy. Everyone knows, the history of it, and it's because they've literally pounded it into your brain.
1000%. No shade to them, by the way, on that. Like that's cool. And everyone that buys it hears about it and talks about it. All right, next watch, Cartier Santos.
Well, how do you feel about it?
Okay, I think you're a guy who wants a watch that can go from day to night, dressed up or dressed down.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea whether or not you're into watches. And frankly, it really doesn't matter to me at that point because you made a great choice on a timepiece, right? So like, I think it's a lot of people's only watch or one of two watches that they wear, you know, and it is perfect for that. I think it is perfect for any and every occasion. Yes, it's a scratch magnet, but like it's a incredibly elegant timepiece, but at the same time sporty, which very few watches can achieve. Yeah. And so as someone who either knows a ton about watches or someone who knows literally nothing, a great choice on both ends.
Yeah. I don't disagree just in terms of that transition between day and night, as you said, and the idea that it can live in both worlds of being both, you know, a sporty watch, which is its actual origin history, and also has like the elegance as well. It is sort of a perfect watch in that regard. So yeah, I don't know that I have anything too divergent to say from what you just shared, but yeah, I completely agree. And I own one too. So again, full disclosure there.
The JLC Reverso.
You're a watch person. You know your history. You know the whole backstory. And you know what they call JLC, like the what is it, like your watchmaker's favorite watchmaker or something along those lines. And I think it's absolutely true. It's
like you're reading my notes on this, dude. Yeah.
It is. It just says that you know watches and you're sort of you've gotten past you know, the brands of just having to have like a Rolex or something along those lines. Like you've gotten past that point and you're really into you know, again, high horology and you got a JLC and good for you.
Dude, I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. Absolutely. Like definitely into watches. You make a point to show people the Reverso flip a lot. I think, you know, as a Reverso owner, like whether you use it as your own sort of like fidget spinner, you're definitely showing people the capability of that case. I definitely think you've said the sentence JLC is the watchmaker's watchmaker more than once in your life.
Yeah.
And to your point, this is definitely not the only watch in that person's collection.
No.
And I would be incredibly curious to find out what else they have, because every Reverso owner that I've met has an incredibly diverse collection, and maybe not even diverse in the other pieces, but it's certainly not all dress watches, right? Like you could meet someone who has 7 Daytonas, but they have to have a Reverso. And so that's why I think it's super interesting. It's just one of those watches that sort of like, even though it's a dress watch, it sort of lives in its own category of like, kind of like the Speedmaster has become, like everyone says, you know, but you have to have a Speedmaster at least once in your collection. Like I'll go on record saying everyone should have a Reverso at least at one point in their collection, because it's just a fantastic watch. And I guess full disclosure here, I own one. So I love it, and I am at fault for all the things I mentioned about this hypothetical Reverso owner. I couldn't recommend it more though. This one's a brand, so pick any model or talk about the brand in particular. But Baltic,
yeah, I love Baltic. I think they make really awesome and reasonably priced watches. I think it's interesting. We've talked a little bit about watches that don't necessarily say something immediately about you, like whether you are a longtime collector or someone that is you know, just getting into the hobby. But if you are a first time watch buyer and Baltic was, you know, the initial purchase that you've made, it lets me know that you've done some research, right? You've done a little bit of due diligence around like what are some like great entry level watches, and you've landed on Baltic, which is awesome and great for you. If you are a more experienced collector and you have a Baltic as well, it is something that, you know, I know that I've purchased one just because I felt like it would be a great watch to be like an everyday type watch, or when I wanted to wear something a bit more casually that wasn't drawing attention to myself. And so I think it can exist in both places. And it says like you've made a really smart and intelligent like purchase. So that's kind of where I land on Baltic.
100% agree. I think there's no question you're a watch nerd, right? If you have a Baltic, like you said, you've done your research, you likely love the classics and appreciate like the design aesthetic of well-built watch that like pays homage to grail watches of yours, right? Like, they all sort of resemble or pay homage to either a Rolex Submariner in the Aquascaf case or a Patek 96. They're just like, they're not knockoffs, right? They're not like replicas of these watches, but they definitely pay respect to them. And, I have no idea what other watches you own, but I am curious to find out what else a Baltic owner owns, and that's like what I think about the owner of a Baltic if they walk by. I also think you probably don't care necessarily about the movement, but I have no doubt that you know a lot about watches.
Yeah.
This one's a tough one for me to even talk about, but Studio Underdog.
Okay, so I know we're going to have a difference of opinion here, and that's okay. I like Studio Underdog. I like it because it has perspective. I like it because it is something that you see and you immediately know what it is. And I think that's incredibly difficult to, achieve with timepieces. I know that they're not everyone's cup of tea. They are incredibly quirky and bright colors and all of that. I do think there are some watches in the line, particularly their field watch. A couple of those models are far more subdued, and I think just as a general matter, like most people can get behind them. But I do realize that they're not everyone's kind of cup of tea. So if I see someone with a Studio Underdog watch, I'm immediately thinking that again, quirky, fun. Probably someone who doesn't particularly care a great deal about, what other people think. And they're probably approaching their collection with a little bit more of a, sort of a lighthearted, disposition when it comes to, what they're thinking about and how they purchase watches. But I'm a fan. I don't actually own one, but I did almost purchase one of the field watches, but I can't wait to hear what you think.
No, it's not. I don't even have much to say. Mine's just pass. I don't want to talk to that person. I can't tell you how much I dislike Studio Underdog. I have no idea what people are thinking walking around with the watches that look like that on their wrist, and they're paying over $1,000 for it or whatever the hell it is.
Have you seen the field watch? Can you tell the difference? After this, I'm going to send you a picture of the field watch. You will not be as disgusted by it than some of the other models. So TBD, to be continued. Go ahead.
Fair enough. Okay, the next watch is very specific. Modern Panda Daytona. And I'm going to start here, Gene. And I'm going to say that I know we both own this watch. Okay, we are obviously biased, but I'm going to try and be unbiased here. And I hate to say it, but the most probable explanation is that this random person you see walking by is likely a hype beast, right? They I'd assume they want a Nautilus, but don't have $100K lying around, or they don't have the stones to spend $100K on a Nautilus. They want to flex. And of course, like you and I, we yell from rooftops that no, we got our respective Daytonas at retail, but it doesn't really matter, right? The world sees what it sees. I think the world sees hypes and assumes that, people like us probably probably paid $30K on the gray market for it. Simple as that. Yeah. And that said, I will say, and I know we've both said this before, I think it's the perfect watch from fit to finish. It's like absolute perfection and packed with cool history, and I'm a huge Daytona fanboy. But the fact of the matter is, if you see someone on the street wearing a Panda Daytona, the thought goes to they obviously bought it gray and they're trying to flex.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably thinking influencer, crypto bro, something along those lines. But I don't disagree with you. I mean, again, this whole episode is about first impressions. And that's probably where I'd land to. My initial reaction wouldn't be like, oh, that person probably got it for retail, because it's generally not the case. So yeah, you're not wrong on that one.
H. Moser as a brand.
Yeah, watch nerd completely.
Totally.
Very much, if you know, you know. It is not a brand that sort of screams from the rooftops, other than for those people that already know what it is. So yeah, I'm just gonna say watch nerd and very much, if you know, you know.
Yeah. And to be honest, I have respect for you, because you're likely someone who doesn't care about what other people think about what's on your wrist. Like, you're wearing that for you, because you know the story behind it. You are a big fan of the brand. You know the watchmaking expertise that goes into it. Mm-hmm. And you probably have some cool stuff in your collection. And even if you don't, you probably know a ton about watches. That's my take on it.
And not your only watch, right? Not your only watch.
Right. Okay. Hermes watches. Can I make this real simple?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you're just getting the spend history to buy your wife a Birkin. Like, there's no other. Listen, the H08 is cool, but like, there's zero reason to go in and buy that.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I was going to say that just there are some cool designs there, but yeah, it's all about purchase history at that point.
Yeah, and I say Hermes very specifically because, like, I think I've talked at least ad nauseum about Louis Vuitton recently and their recent efforts in watchmaking, and so not all luxury fashion brands are in the same bucket. And I also think Hermes has a history of watchmaking too that's pretty interesting. Yeah. But even so, it's spend history. You're trying to get a Kelly or a Birkin, and if you say otherwise, I don't believe you.
You're a liar.
You're a liar. Chanel.
Chanel falls into a really similar category to me as Louis Vuitton. Like, they've definitely made a lot of progress in recent history around taking themselves far more seriously when it comes to horology. I mean, just the investments that they made with respect to movements and I think that they invested didn't they invest in H. Moser?
I think it's Journe.
Oh, Journe, that's right.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, I think it falls into a very similar category as Louis Vuitton for me. Just like, obviously a fashion brand, but at the same time taking watchmaking far more seriously, particularly in recent history. And so, look, I have a bit of a bias there. Again, we'll be open and sort of full disclosure on that point, which but yeah, I just think it falls into a similar category. I'm not going to consider them fashion watches. They're definitely doing more than that, but they haven't quite made it yet.
Yeah, I'm with you. So like, if you're wearing the new ceramic J12, I got questions for you. I want to know why you bought that watch, like how you landed on it. I think it's just over 10 grand, right? The basic one. I think it looks super cool. I'd want to know that person. I'd want to know why they purchased it. I'd definitely strike up a conversation with them. If they're wearing the Tourbillon ceramic one, I don't know if I can be in the same room with you. That seems like way too much money to spend on a Chanel watch. And it's price on request, so I don't really know what the price is, but right. I can't imagine it's cheap. And there's a lot of other watches you could have gotten. So something doesn't smell right. All right, let's close it out with a Nautilus or an Aquanaut. And I'd put them both in the same category. And I think this is a tough one, which is why I want to close it out on this.
Well, you as a Patek owner, I'm very curious to know what you think about Nautilus and Aquanaut owners.
So I say it's tough because it's in a different category than the Royal Oak. Even though Nautilus and Royal Oak are always put in the same category, the Nautilus is just that much more difficult to get, and in recent years, you're spending over $100K to get a 5711, or if you want more complicated, 5712, 5726, whatever it is. So I don't really know what to think of that person. My first impression would likely be that they don't know anything about Patek and its history, which is unfair, right? Because there's obviously big Patek Philippe collectors that obviously own multiple Nautiluses, right? But if I'm just seeing this person walk by with a 5711, 5811, or maybe a 5990. I'm just thinking, like, do you even know that Patek it has this rich history in complicated dress watches and grand complications at that? And like a funny like aside here, like I actually have a good friend of mine, I don't mean to call him out, who, you know, likes to think he knows a lot about watches, but he just knows flex watches. And in fact, like he was, I think he was referring to my 5205, the Patek annual calendar I have. And he was like, "Oh, what's that? You know what I like? I like your round face Patek." And I was like,
round face Patek.
What did you say? And so, because to him, Patek is Nautilus only, and it was odd for him to see a round case, which is wild, right? I mean, like, come on, they invented the Calatrava, they almost invented the round case watch, and you know, like I know there's disputes on that, but certainly one of the first brands to ever come out with a wristwatch that was round. And it's wild to see that someone who considers themselves, you know, into watches, quote unquote, could actually say like, "Oh, I didn't know Patek made these round, quote unquote, round face watches."
Well, you know, what I can say for your friend is at least that friend trusts you enough to consider it to be a safe space to say something like that. So,
well, now I just added him.
Good for you.
Sorry.
Well, you didn't say who he was. What I can say about someone that owns a Nautilus or an Aquanaut, unequivocally, is that they have some level of taste, right? And whether they you know, sort of came to that level of taste by way of just a longer purchase history, or whether they just paid for it outright. There are a lot of watches that you can buy at that price level. Obviously, they made a conscious decision to choose that watch, and I will say that they've got to have some level of taste, or at least someone around them or as part of their group that has that taste that has pointed them in that direction. So that is the positive that I'll throw at that.
I hear you, but I think the Nautilus is right. Stainless steel Aquanaut, you know, I think those are in the secondary market around $65,000, $67,000. You know, what is that retail? I think it used to be 26, must be 28,000 now. Right? It's their entry level watch. Do you think the Aquanaut is worth it at $67,000, $68,000?
No, but I also don't think a Nautilus is worth 100 plus either, right?
Correct.
I mean, you're paying for scarcity and you're paying for exclusivity. So, you know, the short answer to your question is no. It is absolutely not worth that amount of money. But, you know, in many cases, a lot of these most desirable watches on the secondary market are not worth the money that you're paying for them. So.
I guess I'm getting pretty specific here, but I like, you know, with the stainless steel Aquanaut, if I see someone wearing it and I assume they got it secondary, my thought is, if you were willing to go secondary for this watch, you should have gotten a Royal Oak Jumbo. Like, and that's the same price. So to me, it's like I have thoughts about that person in the secondary market, Aquanaut on their wrist. All right. I had some more, but you know, we've gone over here. Hopefully this was fun for people. Hopefully we didn't offend too many people. I do have like a last sort of question to, like, maybe we'll pick it up next time, Gene, but like what watches you think that are in today, like almost fads that won't be around in the next 5 to 10 years, or certainly won't be as popular. That could be brands or models themselves. Maybe the next episode we'll just pick it up at the beginning and each give our answer. We'll think about it a bit. All right, everyone. Well, that's the episode. Thank you all, as usual, for tuning in. Make sure to follow us on social at The Dialed In Pod on TikTok and Instagram. Like, subscribe, rate, review, do all the things you do on podcast platforms. And for anyone in New York, let's go Knicks. Up 3-1 against the Celtics. Oh, man, the Eastern Conference Finals are right. I could taste it. Anyway, that's all for now, guys. Take care.